TV. I'm your host, Albert Williams. This is a special quarantine episode. Today, we're honored to have, he's a city councilman of 31st District, Mr. Donovan Richards. How you doing, boss?
How you doing, brother? You looking well? You looking like you hanging in there? So good to be here. And finally,
Trying. So I'm gonna jump right into it. How you and your family adjusting to the whole pandemic and everything? And what advice would you give the city?
well, it's complicated for each and every one of us. Even as an elected official. I have a 4-year-old son. I'm a married man. So after you're cooped up in the pen so long, you got to figure out ways to make sure that it's all gelling together. So there's certainly been. I'll say the challenges around remote learning, which my son has to do every morning. So I take the morning session. My wife takes the afternoon session. So that's been something we've had to adjust to, because having a 4-year-old in front of a camera all day is not necessarily the way that we all came up learning in the first place. And then to work with them to try to get them to sit still the whole class. He's good the first 40 minutes, but after 40 minutes, he's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Sort of the way my wife, both of us, my wife and I, are pretty busy. She's in education, so she does, she has meetings and other things she has to attend. Then I have stuff I have to do, so we all got to balance our schedule to make sure the 4-year-old is being taken care of, but then also that he gets to go out and get a fresh breath of air. Today I couldn't go. We normally try to do a walk in the afternoon with him. I couldn't go. I've been working all day, but she was able to take him out. So we try to do that so that he gets some fresh air when the weather permits. So it's been good, man. One of the downside of all of this is obviously we all are used to being able to go and walk and go where we need to go. Some of the indirect benefits is being able to spend that time with your family too, or at least be in the house, because we normally are out. My days are normally 14-hour days some days, most days, 14, 15-hour days. So being able to get that time in with the family has been good as well. So, it's been tough, but, we're hanging in there.
Definitely. Just a quick question. Are you from the Caribbean?
Well, my daddy's from the island of Jamaica.
Okay.
So I know my mom was born here. So, I had the best of both worlds. I had oxtails and some good macaroni and cheese, and you can't beat that.
Can't at all.
Donovan is what they would call me in the islands.
That's why I asked, to be honest with you. That's why I asked. You don't meet too much Jamaicans that doesn't have Donovan. I said he's got to be Caribbean.
Are you repping?
Huh?
I said you got the colors on. You got the green on. I think your hat got a little yellow.
Yeah, definitely. To be honest with you, Councilman, I'm actually from Guyana.
Oh, nice. Oh man, yeah. There's a good restaurant. I forgot the name of it on Merrick Boulevard, but they have some good Guyanese cuisine, man. You got to check it out. The food is just awesome.
Quick question. What made you want to get into politics?
Well, it was an unfortunate incident. I come from the neighborhood like everybody else. I actually thought earlier on in my life I was going to be involved in music. So I actually interned at Violator Management. I worked directly under Chris Lighty. So Chris Lighty, for those who don't know, and he was a mentor of mine. Chris Lighty. My interview, literally going in to see if I could get an internship out of college, was he sent me to the store to get a plunger. Like literally, like, can you go get a plunger? That was my interview. It was a test. Came back with his change, gave him his plunger, and it sort of opened up this world, like, where I got to meet with folks, get to know folks like Busta Rhymes. I was there when Cent got signed. Missy Elliott, I remember going with her manager to even pick out earrings. Not that I could pick out earrings, but figuring out how she do. Eve was up there at the time, Nori. So that's sort of the space I thought. I was really into the management piece. I worked with James Cruz as well, who was also at that time Busta Rhymes manager. So I was in that space. But while I was up there, I had a friend who got killed, was shot and killed right here in South Jamaica. And I remember walking out of his funeral and just being like, I didn't feel the same. I was like, I want to do something greater with my life. Not to say music couldn't have helped with that as well, but I ended up meeting my local council member at a gun violence meeting. I was about 19 years old, 18 years old, about to turn 19. And he offered me a job in November 2003, and I ended up working for him for nearly a decade. So really committed my life to my childhood friend Puba, as we called him, who was shot and killed here. And proud to be a city council member, man. I would have never gone down this path, but through tragedy, we try to find triumph in our neighborhoods, you know? So that's how I got here.
With that being said, rest in peace to your friend Puba and Chris Lighty.
I was sworn. Just funny fact, not funny, but just crazy. It shows you how when you follow purpose, things happen. I was sworn in on the anniversary of his death, of my childhood friend, on the floor of City Hall.
That's heavy.
Circle, heavy. Yeah.
That was one of my favorite compilation albums too. And I remember the time. So when you get to hear you say that, was wow, he was in that circle. That's kind of cool.
Yep.
So we talked about you're currently the city councilman for the 31st district, and before this pandemic, you were actually running for borough president.
Yep.
For some people that don't know, talk to me about some of the jobs of the borough president, and how do you think you were doing before this pandemic happened?
Yeah, well, listen, I think the work we were doing for our community was really to address all the things we see with the pandemic, right? So I represent, for those who don't know what the 31st district is, Far Rockaway, Auburn, Edgemere, Laurelton, Springfield Gardens, and Rosedale. And a lot of the work we were doing was to really address the systematic issues that our communities have dealt with going back before I was born. So when you think about over-policing, now I oversee the police department in the city council. I'm actually the checks and balances on them. So I just had a hearing last Friday on social distancing and the bias and the arrest on that. But I also chaired two other key committees, which were environmental protection. When I came into the council in 2013, people were like, why do you want to chair environmental protection? And I'm like, us Black folks got to get more engaged in these conversations around the environment. So when you think about Southeast Queens as a whole, flooding has historically happened here for 40 years. For 40 years, every time it rained, people had water in their basement. So I said, why wouldn't I want that position? So I was able to come into council and get that position, and that enabled me to secure about $2 billion from the mayor to build out the sewer system right here in Southeast Queens. We have about 40 to 50 projects. Many of them have started already, but they've been on the books for 40 years. So we were able to do that. I also co-chaired the mayor's environmental policy plan, as we call it, One New York, which really was a combination of how do you deal with the systematic issues around health, but also how do you improve the environment, which they all are direct. There's a direct correlation between all of those. And then obviously Far Rockaway was hit very hard by Hurricane Sandy when I came in. So it wasn't like I was coming in, I'm knocking on people's door. Hey, I know you're underwater and your house needs to be pumped, but could you vote for me? I was doing the work in the community for a long time. So the idea was to make sure we were addressing those issues and making sure people could bounce back as fast as we can. Then fast forward, I end up chairing the Zoning and Franchises Committee in the council, which is a very powerful committee because it's land use. And every project that needed to get approved in New York City, pretty much, including the rezoning of East Midtown, East New York, I did my own rezoning in downtown Far Rockaway, private application, those all had to come through my committee. So I was able to not totally control the conversation around everything that happened in land use, but also be able to curtail the plan to work on jobs and what does real affordable housing look like for our community. So to answer your question, and now oversee the police department, which is a very daunting and hard job because my job is to work with the police department, but to also hold them accountable, and we do that. So the job of the borough president, I mean, all of the things I just spoke about, land use, safety, you talk about infrastructure, jobs, those are all the things that the borough president would have a lot of control over, right? So land use applications would have to come through the borough president's office. The borough president's office job is to be the cheerleader of the borough, but also to be the defender of the borough. And right now, when you look at Queens, I mean, for instance, just some startling facts. We're going through COVID-19 right now. the city of New York released a grants and loans program. Only 7% of those programs came to Queens. Only 7% of the resources came to Queens. And then when you chop down that 7%, we know that it didn't go into pockets of our communities that need it as well. It wasn't evenly distributed, most likely. And I have some legislation I'm introducing tomorrow to make sure the Department of Small Business Services is more transparent. So land use, I would have purview over hundreds of community board members. So there are 14 community boards in Queens. So that would give me an opportunity to make sure that we're diversifying the community boards who also play a role in community planning and allocations and resources. And then you talk about working with the mayor, but also working against the mayor. You know, we have to be able to defend our folks, and the mayor's going to have to show us that he is delivering for the people of Queens. Just fun fact about Queens, over 200 languages spoken here, over 190 countries represented. We got to make sure every part of Queens feels represented. And we know historically there have been a lot of corners of the borough that have felt like their voice has not been heard. So that's what we would come in doing. Big agenda on housing, big agenda on housing, jobs, but not just talking about, jobs, making sure the jobs get into the hands of the people who've been left behind, diversifying those community boards, and then making sure healthcare and mental health. Those are two things right now that are at the top of the conversation in our borough. And I think the borough president will have an obligation to lead on those issues as well.
Why do you think a lot of residents drop the ball on local politics and not really understand how important it truly is? Why do you think it's like that? Do you think it's just too much marketing going towards the bigger elections, or do you think it's a us thing, or what do you think that is?
It's a combination. It's a combination. You know, most people think of the presidential election as the most important election, and it is very important. Don't get me wrong. But your local politics, as they say, there's an old saying, all politics is local. So if you're not involved in your city council race, now you got to think about all the things people complain about. You know, people are complaining about, well, why aren't my roads repaved? Why aren't my parks fixed the right way? Why isn't my school? Why don't my kids don't my kids have access to technology in their school? These are all things that the city council plays a deep role on, the state officials as well. So it's just about educating yourselves on what and who does what on which level. But local politics is absolutely critical because you have more of an opportunity to show up to a town hall that your local official is holding over an event the president is. If President Obama came here, you weren't guaranteed a seat to go to a meeting with him, right? But your local elected officials hold meetings. They're here. They live with you. We're required by law also pretty much to live in our communities, except for Congress. For whatever reason, you could live outside your district. But here, you're required to live in your community. So everything going on, you should have a front row seat to and be engaged in fixing. So all politics is local. Just to get to your question, why is there a disconnect? Historically, there's been a disconnect because, you know, information sharing has always been a challenge. Access in some cases has been a challenge. And, you know, the other thing I want to say is that there's room for growth for new people to come in and get engaged. And politicians also have to be welcoming in that space as well, right? It can't just be the same 5 people you're talking to today that you're talking to tomorrow. You need to figure out a way to engage those folks who have not historically been engaged as well. So I think that's it. And I think there's a lot more room for young people to get involved, right? Yeah. And I think the Democratic Party and the respective parties have to figure a way to let me not just say allow, because young people have an opportunity to come in and run and do whatever they want to do. But the Democratic Party also has to stretch its tentacles a little bit more and get young people engaged. Part of the challenge for us as well is that, and it's not to say anything bad about elected officials, it's been people who've been elected a long time. And, you know, we grow used to them and we love them. They're fixtures in our communities. But we got to figure out ways, once again, how do we create that next pipeline of opportunity for young people in our community? And I think once young people see people like me more engaged, that can inspire I'm the oldest person in my office, for instance, right? Like everybody else under me, I have about 9 or 10 staff members. They all are 30 and under pretty much. But it gives me an opportunity to groom them, to teach them, and then for them to go out into the world and take on the next position or learn about government. I like to point to a few staff members I've had. Kid right from here in Laurelton, who worked under me. He's an assistant commissioner now. He came in, he learned this, he built his relationships. Young brother, bad, 30 years old, and an assistant commissioner already at the Human Rights Administration, right? Have other staffers who've gone into work in agencies. So my thing is always, even when you come to work for me, you're here not to be with me for life. I want you, unless you want to be. If you want to work with me for life, that's on you. But I really want you to learn the minutia of government and then go out into the world and use the talent and get paid more, so that we can even the playing field around home ownership and other things, so that we can produce that next level of leadership.
Definitely. And before I ask the next question, I do want to say, me personally, any politician I support, I'm extremely critical of.
Yep.
So you got to give credit where credit is due sometimes. One thing I could say about you and the councilman in my district, Danique Miller, they're always visible. They're always visible. And I want to give you your credit for that, because I'm extremely critical, but you're always in the streets. And I think.
Oh, let me say something about Danique. Full story. So I got elected in 2013 in a special election. Danique came in right after me. So I didn't always have a suit on and a tie, coming up in the neighborhood. I used to get in trouble. So my mom and my dad shipped me up to this boarding school. It's a basketball prep school in Albany. Lamar Odom went there. And I ended up dorming there for, I think it was 2 or 3 years, because my academics were horrible. I went to Jamaica High School. I had a poor average. But when I got up there, it sort of alleviated some of the peer pressure, and I was able to focus a little bit more. But Danique Miller wins his election, and I go to the party, and I walk up to his son. What's going on, Kawan? What's going on? We dormed together at that boarding school, and
small world.
We had no idea, right? And then Danique is like, "How do you know him?" Like, we went to Redemption together, and full story. So I went to school with his son,
Yeah. But that's something I just wanted to commend you. You, like, most of the time when I see you on Instagram, you're always in the streets. You never you be in the streets doing what you're supposed to do. So I just think that goes a long way more than just being on a news network all the time. It goes a long way when people know your face from the streets and not just on the news. So I want to just commend you on that. The next question is, if there was anything you can change about, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was
if there was anything,
going to lead from the front, not the rear.
Absolutely. If there was one thing you can change about criminal justice reform, about the criminal justice system right now, as far as reform, what would it be? Like one specific thing?
Well, I'm doing that now in my capacity as chairman of the Public Safety Committee, having oversight over the police department. I mean, the clearest thing would be to make sure that you knew who was policing in your neighborhood. I would say there's a law in Albany, a bill in Albany, 50A, which is state regulated, state overseen, which protects police officers who come into your community and hit you upside the head. Although they might have hit 50 people upside the head, you'll never know, because their discipline records are shielded from the public based on law. So New York State has the most restrictive police transparency in perhaps the country. I mean, in other places, I think even California, is less restrictive. So you're able to know who's policing your neighborhood. And why is that important? Because when police come into your neighborhood, as we witnessed even with the social distancing arrest, right? And you saw what happened in the Lower East Side when this police officer, Mr. Garcia, beat this guy up, all over because he didn't have a mask on or whatever the case was. But that police officer had accumulated hundreds of thousands of lawsuits against him right here in New York City, and we would have never known it if it wasn't leaked, right? So I think that is something critical. And then bias in policing, I mean, period. I did a lot of work around marijuana enforcement. I held a hearing at City Hall because in your neighborhood, in my neighborhood, I don't know if you knew this, we led the city for 10 years in marijuana arrests and summonses.
Definitely.
Think about that. There were over 20,000 arrests and summonses all over low-level marijuana in Black communities, um, specifically right here in Southeast Queens, which we led the city. So out of my hearing, um, we were able to pass a law which mandated every police precinct right now in New York City now is mandated to report on summonses and arrests around marijuana. And that enables us to see that transparency and hold them accountable. But there's too many scenarios where we see this bias in policing. The criminal justice system alone, if I was to house somebody or your cousin or me in Rikers for a year, it costs over $300,000 a year. Think about what we could do with that money if we actually invested in them, right? We could put people into home ownership. We could pay for your education. We could pay for your health care with $300K a year. So the prison industrial complex is big business. And, you know, the way to destroy that and to get at the crux of it is to ensure that we have fair and good and transparent and accountable policing in our communities. That policing is the gateway into the justice system. So we don't stop that in its tracks, then we'll continue to have a system that puts us into Rikers. And I'm very happy to have voted to close Rikers because it's a hellhole. Not afraid to say it. I'm not going back on my vote. I don't care what anybody says. That place needed to be closed. It did nothing good for anybody in our neighborhood. Jail is supposed to be about rehabilitation, not about keeping people down. So that's what I would say. Policing is the number one issue. That 50A bill at the state level, if that could be repealed so that we know who's policing, I think you'll solve at least 50% of the issues in our community.
I definitely agree with that. And just to piggyback on what you're saying, I think a lot of times, especially during the summer, I don't think these police officers know the difference between the bad guy they're looking for and the kid that's home from college,
Yep.
just chilling at the park with his friends. And I think that's when it gets kind of dangerous.
Right. And
you're
not always in a tie. Yeah, we're not always in a tie. I come outside in my jean jacket suit too with my Nikes on, right? Mm-hmm. But the point is there's this perception that Black and brown people are just dangerous. I mean, you look at this lady in Central Park. I don't know if you saw the video who called up the guy because he said, "Put your dog on the leash." And then she painted this perception as this dangerous Black man in the park harassing me. All he did was say, "Put a leash on." But that's the perception that's given out to the world. And unfortunately, so there's this perception that we are all dangerous. And you've seen that with the lady that people are calling Karen in Central Park, who was just told, "Put your dog on your leash." But yet she called 911 and gave this perception that there's this dangerous Black man who could probably have weapons on him, who's harassing me, all because he said, "Put your dog on the leash. It's the law." So we have those challenges ahead, and they will remain as we deal with bias, as we deal with systematic racism, quite frankly. But, the thing is, we got to keep struggling to make progress. And without struggle, there is no progress.
Yeah, definitely. And just to piggyback on you say how dangerous it is, just 2 weeks ago, it was nighttime and I was walking home and I forgot something at the store and I turned around and there was a young lady, Asian girl, and she literally got scared and ran. And I just be like, sometimes I ask myself, I wonder what set the tone for people to just feel like you're just thinking about them when you're walking down the street or you think about robbing them, as opposed to just living your life, not even think about the person next to you.
Yeah, so and I was just talking to a reporter a second ago, and I was giving her the same thing. She's white, and we were talking about bias and policing, and I was telling her how even if I go to Manhattan today with a jean jacket suit on, like if I see a white woman, she clutches a pocketbook closer. She doesn't even know I'm a city council member, right? Mm-hmm. Or outside the gates of City Hall, I still can't get a cab, right? It's with a suit on, right? So there's always this bias and systematic racism that exists, and we got to do everything to continue to break that.
Definitely. What would you tell the average Democrat that feels like I don't want to disrespect our history as Black folks and not vote, What if you're dealing with someone that feels like they don't have no choice but someone that they don't like? Like, for example, like Joe Biden. Yesterday, his interview with the Breakfast Club, there
Hmm.
was an arrogance there, and I don't think he's a narcissist. I just think the arrogance came from the fact that you don't have no other choice, so just shut up and listen to me. And I think that's when it gets kind of dangerous when you're in a position where you don't feel like it's the lesser two evils. And I
Right.
just want to know, like, what would you tell a Democrat right now that wants to vote and is going to always vote, but don't really like Joe Biden? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say this, and one, I want to condemn those remarks too, because as Black folks, we get to determine what our history is, and listen, for whatever reason, I mean, I can't understand it why people would want to vote for Trump that look like us, but that's their opinion. That's what that's why people died in wars for us. It's their right to vote. I may not support it, but listen, I'm not going to challenge somebody for their beliefs. If that's their beliefs, if they believe that in their whole heart, I may want to debate them on it and help them think it through a little bit. But at the end of the day, when they go in to pull the lever, it doesn't make them any less Black than me, right? Um, so I would say two different things. One, you got to get involved. I mean, you got to get involved. If you're not involved, it's an old saying: if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right?
Yeah.
Too many of us, being on social media is very interesting because you get to learn. There are a lot of Twitter fingers out there and folks who have a lot of critiques, and it's all good. As elected officials, we rightly should be critiqued, and you better have thick skin. If you don't get back to somebody, even if you can't resolve their issue, I just tell my staff, doesn't matter. Make sure we're pointing people in the right direction, and we try to take it as far as we can to assist people, because if people show up to government's door, um, most people don't even know what the heck their city council member does, or their state official, or their federal official. They don't even know that the different lines of government. They don't know that they're responsible for this, we're responsible for this, I'm responsible for this. But if they contact your office, they contacted you because they truly needed you. So let's be responsive to them. So I think that it's very important for our community, because our elders are getting tired, man. I mean, they 90 years old, burned out, and they still run in the civic association. So we need to see some more young blood coming in. And I always give opportunities. If you want to come in and learn about the bread and butter, and everything is not politics. It's like we're solving the everyday issues that people go through, whether it's unemployment right now, people can't get through. That's stuff my office works through. It's stuff we won't get any big kudos for. The press won't report on it. But the point is we're resolving those folks' issues. Then on the question of the lesser of two evils, I mean, listen, in life you have choices, right? I mean, right now our choice is Trump or Biden. Um, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm supportive of the crime bill, which Biden was a part of when obviously during that period when he was, I believe, in the Senate. I'm not supportive of all of his policy issues, but I do also know that Trump is poison. I mean, you look at this pandemic and you look at how he fumbled this, and how this guy is on the news talking about inject bleach in yourself. And I mean, it's absurd. So you got two choices right now. And unfortunately, I live in a reality. And to stay home is voting for Trump. When I always laugh, I remember I campaigned for Obama, for instance, in 2008. And I remember being I literally petitioned for President Obama, right? Like on the ground right here in Southeast Queens. And this was before everybody got to know who President Obama was, but we knew who he was, right? Like, for the one elected official I worked for who endorsed him. And I remember being in Key Food's lot at that time when Key Food was open in Rosedale, and Black people coming up to me like, "Are you crazy? Ain't no Black man gonna win. You crazy? You wasting your time." And I'm like, we need to shed this mentality that we can't win. And he won. And long story short, I'm sure the same people are like, "Oh, I love Obama. He won. Nah, we voted for him." But it wasn't a cakewalk for him either. Even within our community, people had to learn him. So I would say right now that's just the reality. The reality is we have you better choose the lesser of two evils. And then it's still, even when somebody's elected, your job is to hold them accountable. It doesn't mean that the community shouldn't hold Joe Biden accountable. A large part of why he's going to be elected is because of the black vote in South Carolina and other places, right? The black vote is a powerful vote. That's our strength. So to say you're going to stay home is voting for the opposition. That ensures that Trump wants you to stay home. That guarantees him another 4 years. So do you want to live under Trump for another 4 years and set back your community for another 40 years? Because that's what's happening right now. Or do you rather go with a Biden who may not walk on water, who certainly has a lot of gas, but somebody we can at least work with and try to keep some level of normalcy and push him on progress? That's the big question mark. So,
When I do interviews, some of my best conversations or sound bites are from people that don't want to sign a release form.
oh yeah,
And I'm just going to give you just a little bit of some of the conversations I have. I just think there are a lot of people that support Trump, but that would never have a conversation about supporting him on record. I think
right.
that's one. And
Oh yeah,
two, also, a lot of people look at it like they don't really see the difference between a Trump and a Biden. And
right.
for me personally, I feel like there is a difference, but I would like to go to the polls and feel good about who I'm voting for.
Right.
I feel like I don't have a choice, like what you were saying. So a lot of people are just having a hard time seeing a difference between the two. Is what I'm experiencing. People are saying.
And we got to develop that choice, right? And the bottom line is this is not about personality, right? I mean, as much as I want to talk about personality, the thing is how do we leverage? And I listen to Sharpton on Sunday mornings on BLS as well. And it's not a people get caught up in personality too much. I'm not here to have a personal relationship with Joe Biden or any other candidate, right? The bottom line is that the what is your agenda, right? And we should be setting, just as other communities do, a 10-point, 15-point, whatever it is, 20-point agenda that we go to Biden with and say, if you want our support, these are the things we're looking for. The days of us just going out and casting a vote should be over. Just as I leverage opportunity, right? Mayor Bill de Blasio eventually came to me for support, right? And I was able to say, well, sir, not that you could trade votes for anything like that, but look at the inequality in my district. Look at downtown Far Rockaway. Look at the parks who haven't gotten any investment. Look at Rosedale. Look at my roads on Francis Lewis, right? We were able to say to the mayor, my constituents haven't gotten the services. If you even want me to blink your way, you need to come down here and look at the conditions and let's work on a plan and then we can get there. And there's contentions. I get in contentious battles with the mayor still. I wouldn't say I'm not an ally, but there are pros. Listen, relationships have strains. And, even when you look at COVID-19, I wasn't afraid to call the mayor out about the lack of testing in Black and brown communities, right? That's real. Come on. No, Black folks should stop being told to stay home. They need testing right now. We need it in our community. Why are other communities being provided testing and drive-through testing, but we get none? So we have to hold people accountable. It's not about, do we like him? I would say even for President Obama, the same thing. Love President Obama, but here's some policies we need to see moved. And he moved healthcare. He moved some things, and there's some things he fell short on. That's okay. But the point is we moved that needle of progress. So I'm not here to say as an elected official that I walk on water, that all 100,000 requests my constituents have looked for the last 40 years, I could resolve in 6 years, right? I mean, it's been systematic for a reason. However, no one could say we haven't moved the needle of progress on issues for the community.
Random but relevant, presented by My Block TV. We have Councilman Donovan-Richards from the 31st District in Queens. I want to thank you again for being here with us. But I want to ask you, I want to come back to the marijuana thing because there's some stuff in California. In order for you to apply for a business license, you have to have someone on the application that had a nonviolent marijuana charge. So basically, you have to teach them the game before you get to capitalize on it. Is that too progressive for you, or is that
Nope.
something New York
Nope.
should be
Nope.
going to?
Nope. New York State should largely be looking to places like Oakland. And let me just tell you that the conversation around marijuana enforcement, that's what led the state, because my committee unveiled that 81% at that time of all arrests and summonses on marijuana were in Black and brown communities. So that was work that directly came out of my committee and the council, and then catapulted up to the state, because then the governor read it and everybody read that startling fact. I mean, it was everywhere. It was the topic of the day when those numbers came out. And that's the power of seizing opportunity and seizing positions and making it work for the community. Not just so I could have a nice title, but that I can look at what are the systematic issues that impact our communities. So yes, largely getting back to Oakland, which is a good example of it. And they haven't got it 100% correct there either, if you speak to legislators there, but they got it as close as you would want it. One, we know that these marijuana companies are going to come in and make billions of dollars in New York State. We should make sure that that money that's coming in, just as they have the lotto that's supposed to go into education funding, that money that comes in from marijuana enforcement, marijuana sales should largely be redistributed back into the communities that were hit with the largest summonses and arrests. So let's start there, right? Then two, yes, a lot of us may not have the capital to start our own weed company. So the companies that are going to come in, these big pharma folks who are going to come in, they should be mandated to build out business incubator space, just as they're required in Oakland, and to also give up startup capital money as well, so that you can learn the business and then move your way, move up the ladder and own your own company and do what you need to do. And then the third thing is that they need to expunge everybody who got a marijuana arrest on their record. That's critical. So that's what they did in California. In New York State last year was on the cusp of passing marijuana, legalizing it, but it fell through because Big Pharma was coming back to the community with crumbs, saying, "Oh, we'll give a few $1 million a year and sprinkle it here, and that should be good enough." No, we're not looking for a slice of the pie. Our communities were hit the hardest over it, so we should get the maximum benefit. And sprinkling crumbs to us is not the answer. So I was very proud of Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie, Assembly Member Crystal Stokes, People Stokes, who has the bill to legalize it, because they were speaking truth to power. And the other thing is, it's great to have Black leadership in the front who can determine the fate around this stuff, because they know how we've been impacted by it.
And another thing I heard Joe Biden say, that the only thing that really disturbed me was him saying that he's waiting on the research of marijuana and its effects to the brain long term, and he doesn't want to move until he sees the research on that. And I just thought that was a bunch of BS, but it is what it is.
Goes back to, listen, Joe Biden is going to come to all of us for support. We need to be able to have these conversations, especially the elected officials. He's going to need validators. So it's really about building that network of validators who share our common values. I think the research is clear. I think they're even talking about marijuana as could be a cure for COVID right now. I think I read that the other day, right? I'm not saying that I'm gonna be out here smoking every day, but the point is that there are benefits. And actually, to tell you the truth, if you're wealthy right now in New York State, you can get medical marijuana, right? I mean, so you got white folks getting medical marijuana as we speak. But for our own communities, we don't have any access to that. We don't got the healthcare. We don't have the insurance to go out there and grab medical marijuana. So this comes back to that question around equity and access. And I think the research is clear already. I don't think we need to debate that. And I'm not here to promote the use of marijuana. If people want to use it, da da da. But the point is that everybody uses marijuana, whether you're Black, Chinese, Latino, whatever you are. Everybody uses marijuana at the same rates, except Black people. Black and brown communities are the ones thrown in jail over it. So
definitely. All right, I'm gonna get a little light on you, but before I do that, I want to ask you one more question. I was actually looking at an interview the other day, and a caller called into the show, and they made some real excellent examples of forms of reparations, like I think he was talking about the Bay of Pigs, how Cuba, really gave out business grants, and this is why you see so many businesses, Cuban businesses in Miami and in Florida area. We
Mhm.
see, look at some of the compensation that the Japanese people got, and the Jews. So my question is, why do we make reparations look like it's such a daunting task? Look, like, why do both parties make it look like it's such a daunting task when in fact we have so much examples of people getting compensated the proper way because of our terrible history in this country?
Yeah.
So why
Well,
do we make it such a daunting task or make it look like it's such a daunting task?
yeah, where there's a will, there's a way. And not that I was ever going to support Michael Bloomberg for president, but he did come up with a very interesting concept, and it wasn't actually reparations, a direct check to us, but a concentration of dollars going into concentrated communities that have poverty. And I thought that was actually a good. I mean, it was a solid. I haven't really heard solid proposals on ways people would help our communities, and that's been the most challenging part of this whole presidential election right now, right? Because there's no one who's coming with a sharp plan that we can see that points to, we're going to invest $5 billion into your businesses, into training, into into this corner of the world. And that can be a form of reparations as well, right? I don't think it's that hard. I think Cory Booker talked about it on the presidential trail. I think he had a bill around reparations as well. And absolutely, I mean, our communities slaved. We built this country. We built the White House. Without a doubt, we deserve to be reciprocated for the work that we've done. So I understand it's a question of economics, right? It's a question around systematic racism, and you got to think about redlining and all the things that have really prevented us from excelling to the levels. Although President Obama became the president of the United States, we continue to reach those heights even though we face that same level of discrimination. But you gotta, if you're not speaking economics and community development, you'll never level the playing field for our communities and for people.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
I agree. I'm good.
On a lighter note, what's on your playlist, man? What do you listen to? What you currently listen to?
I can't listen to. Okay, so I'll give it to you. Jada Kiss.
Yeah.
His new album I love. Who else? Tupac, Biggie. I'm a hip hop head. You know who I do like? I like Joyner Lucas. He's on my
Yeah.
playlist. If you heard of him, his newer album is pretty good. I'm into Dave East. I like
Definitely.
Dave East a lot. And also, I had a kid who was volunteering for my campaign. I forgot the rapper's name, but he's from London. So I've started getting into some of the London rappers um, because he put me on to a few of them. Who else? Who else? Yeah, so I would say that's my main playlist. It's just
I'm surprised you didn't say any reggae, man. No
nah,
dance song, no
you
reggae?
know, so I did watch my wife had me watching the Beanie Man versus Bounty Killer versus battle this week. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. It had some hype music there. I mean, I'm a Bob Marley fan. I mean, but not a big. I'm not. I'm a hip hop head.
What you do? Netflix, Hulu? Like, what do you
I
prefer? You
do.
don't even have time for that.
I do Netflix. I mean, because we never would have the time to really get into series and stuff like that. But I'm watching now, which is on Showtime, Billions. Everybody was telling me I should watch that show. Pretty good. It's about Steve Cohen, who is like this big Wall Street exec, and then Preet Bharara, who Trump fired, who was the U.S. attorney. I think it's largely based off of them. So that's been a very interesting series. What else have I watched? I've watched a few good movies. I watched this movie Sprint, which was Jamaican. Since you get into, I think Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith produced that movie. It was pretty good about this runner in Jamaica, a young man trying to overcome his obstacles there. And then I watch some weird stuff. I'll be watching like space, Yeah, I'm
You
into.
got a weird playlist too, man. It's all good.
I was watching yesterday SEAL Team 6, which is like the operatives that took out Bin Laden. So I'm into that sort of stuff too.
Oh.
Movies.
Cool. So I heard you say something about you went to a basketball like boarding school. So you're a basketball head over a football man, or you both?
Yeah, basketball over football. I mean, even though it's been rather hard over the course of the last few years to really sit down and focus and watch a full season. I mean, really, I don't really get an opportunity to get closer to the playoffs or to the championship to really delve in. But basketball has always been, I could play a little something. I ain't going to show you all my skills. But that's me. I'm a basketball head.
There's not too much cats from your side of the town that can't ball, so I know you probably had a little game with you.
Yeah, we got a little something. I
Well,
used to be a guy 6'5". I don't know if I can do that anymore.
no doubt. Well, Congressman, I want to again, like any politician I support, I don't got a problem being critical of them, but I do like to give credit where credit is due. And one thing that's consistent with you is you always smashing the concrete, doing what you're supposed to do. You, Danique, and I don't know what's your relationship with Jamani Williams, but if I'm critical of you, that means I'm gonna support you. So I just want to thank you for being on the show. And
Thank you. Glad we got to.
if you don't mind, you could just tell the people your website and everything. I'll have it on the
Yeah. So if you're looking, if you have a government issue, you can go to drichards at council.nyc.gov. That's my email. If you're looking to just find out what is he up to, you can go to council.nyc.gov. And that'll give you all the relevant information on the hearings, on the budget stuff, what we're up to. Facebook, I'm D Richards NYC Council. Instagram, I'm D Richards NYC Council. On Twitter, D Richards 13. And then if you're looking for my campaign platform, because I am running for Queensborough president, I want to remind people to get out June 23rd and vote. You can also vote from the comfort of your home now. You can go to actually, I
got that in the mail. Actually, I got that little thing in the mail. Yeah.
So you can fill that out, but you can also go online to nycabsentee.com, and then you can just do it all online, and they'll just send you your ballot, and you send it in and vote. The voting locations will be open, to be determined on how many will be open, where they'll be open, but that's going to happen for June 23rd, and you could vote from the comfort of your home. So you can do that. And my campaign website is richardsforqueens.com, so you can find out a little bit more about our platform and what we're doing around the community.
We're definitely going to post that at the end of the show. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Roundup Relevant. We want to thank Councilman Richards, 31st District, Queens, for joining us. Good luck on the campaign, and you definitely got my vote, brother.
Thank you. My Block TV. Let's go.
Peace.
All right. Peace. God bless. Take care.